Pizzini says, finish him, your way. And Fezzik says,
oh, good, my way. Thank you, Vicini. What's my way?
pick up one of those rocks, get behind a boulder. In a few minutes, the man in black will come running around the bend. The minute his head is in view, hit it with the rock.
My way is not very sportsmanlike.
I did that on purpose. I don't have to miss.
I believe you.
All right, Laurel, thank you so much for joining me again. And today we're going to talk about the movie, The Princess Bride.
One of our favorites. We've been talking about it for a while now that we want to review this. And so it's a lot of fun to do it.
Absolutely. And this movie came out in 1987. And when it first came out, it wasn't the biggest hit at the box office, but it later through VHS. I wish I had an old VHS tape that I could hold up, but VHS tapes, it became a cult classic where people, watched it and over again and started quoting it. And it became very popular through VHS tapes, not so much at the movie theater.
I think people didn't know what to do with this movie. And that's why it was so hard to make it, because there was a lot of time between the book, S. Morgenstern wrote the book that was long and boring. And then this kid, what was his name, that wrote the other book?
William Goldberg is a screenwriter. And he wrote the screenplay to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And this was a book that his father read to him when he was sick. And he got the book and he realizes that his father was leaving out all the boring parts. So he decided to rewrite it and then tried to get different movie studios to make it into a movie. But I think he sold the rights to have it as a movie, but a lot of movie studios just didn't know what to do with it. So for like a good 20 years or 15, 20 years after he wrote it, it was not made into a movie.
And then finally, Rob Reiner got on board, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Rob Reiner wanted to make the movie. And I think he went to whatever studio he was working with. They said, whatever you want to do. And he said, I want to do The Princess Bride. And they're like, anything but that.
And he's like, well, no, you help me with this one. You help me with this one now. Like he kind of negotiated with somebody. Then they had to look for all the roles of the people, right? Because there's so many interesting characters.
And so this is a romantic fantasy comedy. It was something that was very different. There was old fantasy movies, but this was kind of like a farce on those in a way. And it was something that they didn't know what to do with. And there were only certain people that could play parts. Like we have a giant as one of the characters.
Then there will be no one to hear you scream.
And there was only one person that could do that, was Andre the Giant, who at the time was part of the World Wrestling Federation.
Andre's just taking his time. Andre seems to have no fear at all for Hogan's strength.
They couldn't get him, but time he was going to be working with the World Wrestling Federation in Japan, and that was canceled. So he then became available. So there was only certain people that could have played these parts.
Yeah, and he was amazing. And I know that, he had a short life, and this is one of the most memorable things I think he did. And we'll always remember him. And he was such a gentle guy. He looked like this big, massive giant, but he was such a nice guy. We'll talk about one of his scenes in the movie where he said he wanted to be sportsmanlike.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that, because he's not a mean guy. He's just big. So, and let's talk about some of the other characters too. So who are the main characters?
Well, it starts out that we meet Buttercup, and she lives on a farm, and she has the farm boy, and whatever she wants, he just says, as you wish.
Farm boy, fill these with water. Please.
As you wish.
So, and then she realizes it's turned into a true love. Isn't it the fact that he has to go away and make his fortune before he can marry her?
Yes, he doesn't have any money, so he goes away on a ship to make his fortune, but his ship is taken over by the dread pirate Roberts, who takes no prisoners. He kills everybody. So she gets word that he's been killed. And then what happens? We have Prince Humperdinck.
So she somehow says, oh, he's dead. I'm never going to be able to see him again. My heart, is broken. And then he comes along and he demands that she marry him. Prince Humperdinck. He was the prince over all the land, and you couldn't say no. And she was the prettiest girl on the land, so he wanted her. but he didn't love her. And so she has to go through this whole facade of getting married, and she decides that she doesn't really want to marry him, but she'll go through with it, and then she'll, you know, like take her own life on her wedding night or something. I mean, we go through this whole, you know, thing. And she still loves Wesley, even though he's dead, according to the story. Well, guess what? He turns up, but it's not him, it's the Dread Pirate Roberts. So the whole time, this is my thing. Okay, so you love this guy with all your being, and then he comes along, somebody that looks like him, and you don't even have a suspicion that it's him.
Same thing with Superman. Superman is, what's the name of the reporter that he plays? Clark Kent. And nobody realizes that Clark Kent is Superman. Like,
right. His glasses make such a difference, you know,
right.
like really,
so,
that's all.
The Pirate Roberts just has a mask, a Zorro mask, and it's unrecognizable.
Exactly.
Seriously.
I know. She's like, but my true love is dead. He's like, true love never dies. You know, he has all these quotes. And so he knows that she is the one that he loves, and he's going to tell her eventually, but he makes her think he's the Dread Pirate Roberts. So it's pretty funny.
We do want to mention that before she bumps into him again, she is riding through the woods and she's kidnapped by these three men. And one is Vicini, the Sicilian, Physique, who is played by Andre the Giant. And we have Inigo Montoya.
Yeah, that's right.
So basically these three men kidnap her, who are really being hired by Prince Humperdinck. So they kidnap her and they bring her on a ship. And meanwhile, Wesley is following them the whole time.
And so the comedic part of the movie really comes when these guys are on the ship with her, and they know each other from previous, you know, robberies, or, you know, whatever they are. What are we, like just a band of bandits or something?
Yes.
You know, they're just bad guys for hire, basically. And so they are going after, they're actually hired to start a war.
Yes, between Lauren and Gilden.
Right, which are like Italian. I mean, basically that they sound Italian, and
they do.
Everybody in the movie has like an English accent, except for Inigo, who is Sicilian, so he's Italian. Or is he the Spaniard? Yeah.
Oh, Vincenti is the Sicilian. And then we have Inigo that is the Spaniard. We have, we do have Billy Crystal playing
Medicine Man, and his wife, Carol Kane, she doesn't have an accent. They're like, good luck storming the castle. So they're very American. It's really cute. Yeah, so there's a few in there. Of course, Andre the Giant just has his accent, his whatever. He's pretty much just unique, you know, the way he talks. So, and he has a very deep voice, you know, it's fun. But anyway, so they're on the ship, and they're trying, and she was captured, and she has a blindfold on, and she can't see anything, and she's acting very brave. And there's that part where she's sitting there and all the guys are joking around about the rhyming.
That Vicini, he can fuss.
Fuss. Think you like to scream at us.
Probably he means no harm.
He's really very short on charm.
They're joking and they're talking to each other, but they're not supposed to be talking to each other.
You have a great gift for rhyme.
Yes. Some of the time.
Enough of that.
But yeah, they love to rhyme with each other, and they love to think on their feet. So they're not stupid assassins. They're pretty smart. They're pretty adept at, you know, figuring things out. And then the guy in charge is like, no more rhymes now, I mean it. And then the other guy goes, anybody want a peanut?
Fezzik, are there rocks ahead?
If they are, we all be dead.
No more rhymes now, I mean it.
Anybody want a peanut?
Yeah!
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so the guy in charge is the shortest one, the Sicilian, and he loves to say this word, inconceivable. Yes, and these guys are not that smart sometimes, but they know that this word that he says all the time, that's inconceivable, like unbelievable, is basically what it means.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable.
You keep using the word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
And then there's the controversy between the Spaniard and Dread Pirate Roberts.
Right. So they were all going up this
Cliffs of Insanity.
With Andre the Giant, carrying the three of them up, and then the Dread Pirate Roberts climbing below them, and then Vincenzi cuts the rope, and amazingly, the Dread Pirate Roberts grabs onto something so he doesn't fall down the cliff. And so Vincenzi said, "Take care of him."
And not a good way, like kill him.
Kill him, basically. So eventually they have a conversation. Wesley's trying to climb up and the Spaniard's up the top and he's like, "Hey, can you hurry up? I'm impatient." And the whole thing about like throwing me a rope, I can't trust you and all this. And he finally throws the rope to him and he climbs to the top, and Inigo gives him a chance to catch his breath. And they have a little like conversation, and he says, "You seem like a decent fellow. I hate to kill you."
You seem like a decent fellow. I hate to die. And so then they do this whole fencing thing. And I guess they had to learn swordplay to do it.
They did. They got trained by the people that had trained people for Star Wars and other movies. And they watched the old fencing movies and trained every moment that they weren't filming, they were training. And little known thing is that Wesley, he actually broke his big toe. Apparently, Andre needed an ATV to get around because he didn't fit into cars in the town. And so Andre kept on trying to get Carl Eves to try the ATV. And so he finally said, "Yes, I'll do it." And the moment he tried to put it in gear and stuff, he ended up like going over some rocks and he broke his big toe.
Oh, man. So Wesley was hurting.
Yeah, so he was hurting through those scenes, and they decided to, that whole fencing scene is actually filmed at the end.
Really? So he didn't end up killing him, but at least, he was out of the running at that point of trying to stop him from going to get the princess. The funny scene that we haven't mentioned yet is how they're supposed to fight. Pizzini says, finish him, your way. And Fezzik says,
"Oh, good, my way. Thank you, Vicini. What's my way?"
"Pick up one of those rocks, get behind a boulder. In a few minutes, the man in black will come running around the bend. The minute his head is in view, hit it with the rock."
My way is not very sportsmanlike.
I did that on purpose. I don't have to miss.
I believe you.
So he cares about being a sportsman. The other guy's like, no matter what, just do your, do what you have to do. So he doesn't care about ethics at all.
No.
So they're trying to get to this point where he finally catches up with them on the boat. He finally goes up the mountain. He beats the Spaniard. He knocks out the big giant. And then they're sitting on the top of the hill, or maybe on the other side of the hill, at a table. And the Sicilian and Wesley and Princess Buttercup, which is her name at this point, she has a blindfold on, and they're like fighting for her. And what happens then?
Well, they decide to have a challenge of wits where one person will die. And so they basically, Wesley, who's the Dread Pirate Roberts, has this poison. Can't remember the name of it. Iocane powder. And he says, "Okay, I'm going to put it in one of these cups. You're not going to see which one. And then you're going to guess which one. And one of us will win and one of us will die."
So they drink the wine after, actually the battle of wits is the Sicilian is saying that, well, I'm a very smart man, so you know that I'm not going to do this. And you're very smart, so you know I'm not going to do this. And he's trying to debate his way out of this. And Dread Pirate Roberts is like, "Okay, have you made your decision?" And he goes, "Yes, I have." And he goes, "Wait, what's that over there?" And he is able to switch the cups. Exactly. And then he goes, "Okay, let's drink. Me from mine and you from yours." And then the Dread Pirate Roberts, they both drink the wine. And then the Dread Pirate Roberts says, "You guessed wrong." And the Sicilian says, "No, you just think I guessed wrong because I switched the glasses when your back was turned. Never taunt a Sicilian when death is on the line." So he goes, "Ha ha ha ha." And so then he's able to run away with the princess, and then they roll down the hill, and finally at the end of the hill his mask comes off, and then she goes, oh, my sweet Wesley. And she finally figures out this is her true love and he's not really dead.
Don't forget when she pushes him down the hill.
That's right. She pushes him down the hill because she
As
thinks he's a bad
you
guy.
wish.
As you wish.
Oh, my sweet Wesley. What have I done?
And she then throws herself down the hill and they roll down.
And then they were like, oh, I'm so glad you're not dead. I would just love you. I just missed you so much. And then, yeah, they start talking. And then
They have to go through what was the fire swamp?
yeah, the fire swamp is next. So they go through the fire swamp and there's the ROUSs, which are the rodents of unusual size.
Yeah.
And they like fight her and all this kind of stuff. They say, nobody's ever lived through the fire swamp. You're just saying that because nobody ever has.
Exactly. He's like, well, it's kind of charming. I wouldn't want to have a summer house here, but the trees are kind of charming.
Well, I'm not saying I'd like to build a summer home here, but the trees are actually quite lovely.
Quite lovely this time of year. So then they finally get out and they survive. And what happens next?
Then the Prince Humperdinck is right there with his soldiers and he's like, he says, surrender. And then Wesley said, oh, you surrendered to me? I accept.
Surrender.
You mean wish to surrender to me? Very well, I accept.
And then Princess Buttercup is so naive. She says, if I hand him over to you, will you promise not to hurt him? And then he says, of course. And then they know
Yeah.
that this is not going to happen this way. So she thinks that she's doing him a favor, but she's not. They could have run away. But of course, Prince Humperdinck is always going to come after.
Yeah.
So, but they go through this whole thing where he's captured now and they take him to the pit of despair. And what happens there?
Where he's tortured and they have this like suction thing, which is usually like used to suck water or other things, but instead it's sucking life out of you. So they have these suction cups on him and they test it out. There's this Count Reuben, which we didn't talk about. Our friend Inigo Montoya, he had been searching for this count with
6
hands.
fingers on his left
On his
hand, right hand.
Yes, because the count had killed his father when he was 11 years old and he challenged him to a duel and he didn't win. And he decided to spend his whole life training so he could find him and kill him. So
Right.
anyway,
That's why he's so good at fencing.
yes. And so that we finally meet the count at that point, and the count is testing out his thing that's called, is it called the machine?
The machine. Yes.
And he's just bringing it up to 1. He's like, maybe I'll try 5, but like, please let me know how it makes you feel for prosperity's sake. Later on, the princess tells Prince Humperdinck, I'll never marry you. Wesley's coming for me. And the prince gets so mad that he goes down to the pit of despair and he turns up that machine all the way up. And they
to 50.
to 50.
No, not to 50.
Not to 50!
Yeah. And so they basically kill Wesley. At this point,
Yeah, within an inch of his life. I
Yeah.
mean, he's still alive, but he's mostly dead.
and then we also, did we mention the little boy and the grandfather?
No, we haven't. So the whole time it's being narrated by this little boy and his grandfather who's reading this story.
He's dead.
Just is not fair.
Grandpa, wait. What did Fezzik mean he's dead?
So every once in a while, you'll come back to the little boy who says he's not interested, but he's like this during the parts of the story. And he goes, oh, it's okay. I can stop reading his. No, I want to hear more.
But
You
he's
know,
like,
so-
who's gonna kill Prince Humperdinck? And Wesley's not
Right.
supposed to die and all this.
Right.
And he's like, no,
This is
Prince
a stupid
Humperdinck.
story. It's supposed to, the good guys need to win, that kind of thing.
And the grandfather
So,
offers
but
to
the
stop.
story's
He's like,
not over yet.
I mean, he didn't mean dead. Wesley's only faking, right?
You want me to read this or not?
so they continue on with the story. And so at that point, I think we have
Inigo Montoya.
Inigo Montoya. He finds out about the count being alive that has a 6-fingered hand, and he wants to avenge his father. So he knows the only person that can help them is Wesley.
Red Pirate
They
Robert.
they keep on calling him the man in black.
The Man in Black. That's right.
So
And how do they find the Man in Black?
they hear him
The two of them.
screaming in despair because he's being killed at that point by Prince Humperdinck, and that's how they find
Yeah.
him.
Right. His screams like reverberate over the whole town. Everybody can hear it. And it goes on for like 5 minutes or more. He's like, ah, and so they look for him and they finally find him in this old tree that you knock on the tree and then the door opens and they go down there. So
Yeah.
that's how they find him. And he's finally like half or mostly dead and they drag him out and they bring him up to the castle and they want to storm the castle. But before they can do that, they have to make him revive.
And so
So
they
they
go
go
see
to
Miracle
see-
Max, who's played by
and
Billy
his
Crystal.
wife. So they revive him with this magic chocolate pill.
That's a miracle pill.
The chocolate coating makes it go down easier, but you have to wait 15 minutes for full potency.
And they're giving all kinds of warnings like no swimming for half an hour, and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But they takes the pill and then his eyes pop open.
But the rest of him is still kind of paralyzed. It's a slow
Right.
working pill.
Why won't my arms move?
You've been mostly dead all day.
We have Miracle Max. Make a pill to bring you back.
Yes.
So they have to keep on moving his head. They're like, okay, we're on the wall. There's 60 men.
It is so funny. And then, they finally, so the big giant has a Holocaust cloak and they're standing at the top of the castle and he's like this scary face and he's like, I am the dread pirate Roberts, prepare to die or whatever they're.
I'm the dread pirate Roberts. There will be no survivor.
And they keep saying that. So all these men that are dedicated to holding on and making sure that nobody comes in, they're like all running away.
Mm-hmm. So they find the person that is the gatekeeper and he's like, oh, I don't have a key. But then they say, oh, Fizzy, just take his arms off. It's like, oh, what, this key?
So they open it up.
They're going in and one of the objectives is to find Count Ruben. So Inigo
Montoya can get his revenge that he's been waiting for since he was 10 years old.
And when he runs into him, what does he say?
My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die. And the guy's like, what? Who are you? Oh, you're that little Spanish brat. I killed your father all these years ago. Yeah. And then he says it again. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die.
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
He goes, stop saying that. And then he gets closer and closer and closer, and then he ends up killing him, right?
Yep, he does. And at the same time, Wesley is on the lookout to find Princess Buttercup, who was rushed through the marriage ceremony.
Under you, Princess Buttercup.
Man and wife. Say man and wife.
Man and wife.
And sent to the honeymoon chamber and
right.
is preparing to kill herself.
She's about to go like this. And then Wes, what does he say? He says something like,
he's actually lying there because he can't move. Somehow he got there because he was left hanging onto a statue or something, but he managed to get there and he's lying on the bed and he's like, he said, perfect breasts are there's a shortage of perfect breasts in the world. It would be a shame to damage yours.
There's a shortage of perfect breasts in this world. It would be a pity to damage yours.
Wesley! Oh, Wesley, darling!
And she's like, oh, Wesley! And then they hug and kiss and all that stuff. So what happens at the end?
Well, Prince Humperdinck walks in and there's a realization that Princess Buttercup is not married because she didn't say I do. And Prince Humperdinck said, oh, well, we'll remedy that pretty soon. He sees Wesley just lying there and Wesley said, no, you won't. I challenge you to the pain. And Prince Humperdinck doesn't think he can do anything because he's just lying there. He's like, well, I might not be able to move, but maybe I can. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And
he goes to the pain. He goes, I don't think I'm familiar with that phrase.
He gets up. Wesley gets up, holds up the sword and he says, drop your sword.
Drop your sword.
And he says, sit in that chair. And she says to Buttercup, tie him up. And he does. He gets tied up. And as soon as he starts to get tied up, you see Wesley kind of losing his energy and kind of stumbling over. And he's like, I knew you couldn't walk.
But they escape and they get out. What is the last thing they do?
Physique has got 4 white horses because he thought you're going to find the lady. And he says, hello, lady.
4 white horses. And I thought, there are 4 of us. If we ever find a lady. Hello, lady.
And then she jumps out the window and he grabs her and they all ride off. And that's when
Into
the
the
grandfather
sunset together.
reads he's like to grandson who doesn't like kissing because he's probably about 11ish. And he's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to read the last part. I think and he's like, no, read it. He's like, well, it's about kissing. You don't like that. And he's like, well, I'm okay with that. So he says, oh, in the history of all the kisses in the world, there were 5 really passionate kisses, but this kiss left them all behind or surpassed all of them.
And you see the 2 of them, Princess Buttercup and Wesley, like silhouetted, and then they kiss, and it's like, oh.
This one left them all behind.
Yeah.
So it's such a good movie. There's adventure, there's romance, so many comedic parts.
The grandfather says there's action, there's fencing, there's intrigue, there's murder, there's all the things the little boy wanted, but then there's romance as well. When the movie came out, it went against, I think, Fatal Attraction, and they didn't know how to market it well, so it didn't do as well in the movie theater, but it started to gain traction with VHS rentals.
And now there's supposed to be some follow-up with Buttercup's daughter, but William Goldberg himself is like, I don't even know if I can, do this again, because that was such a perfect movie, and I don't want to try and continue the story and not be as good.
I think it's the thing when you make sequels and they're not as good, you kind of can ruin it. In fact, there's been many times when I didn't watch a sequel because I didn't want to ruin that perfect image of that movie in my mind. You get it right. I agree. Don't do it. Yeah, this was a really great choice. I think we chose this because Rob Reiner was the director of our last movie that we did, When Harry Met Sally, and just a completely different kind of movie, but a perfect movie to do for sure.
What movie should we do next?
Forrest Gump. What do you think?
I think so too. Some of my members in WhatsApp have said to me, oh, I love the movie Forrest Gump. And actually somebody had the book on there and they were reading the book. It's amazing.
Was it a book first or after?
It was a book first, I think. I know there's and so you hear his voice in the book before you even see him in the movie. We can look that up. It is a great one to do next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's so much history in it. There's
history, and I think
this country and that country and all kinds of fantastical stuff.
Yeah.
But somewhat realistic, more than this one.
More realistic. And I think when you talk about American culture, it's so different. There's regional cultures. There's not this one encompassing American culture, but I think Forrest Gump catches all the regional cultures and kind of is like, okay, if I was going to name a movie that was a really good example of American culture, Forrest Gump would be what I would choose.
Yeah, and he meets presidents, so you can see history and all that kind of stuff. And he goes to the Olympics and he goes across the country and there's a lot of good stuff in there. Yep, he fights in a war and all this kind of stuff. So it's really interesting. And it because it's funny, you can be like exaggerate everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I look forward to that and we'll have to hunt down that movie and watch it.
Yes. And I can't wait to see this review and people can see it too and watch the movie if they want as usual, but this is a good synopsis of it.
Absolutely. And I think you'll be able to find this movie on YouTube because just when I was searching, it seems like there's lots of people putting copies of it on YouTube. Not sure if they're supposed to, but that's not my problem. And there's also one that I'll put inside of the description. There's a really good, what they did during COVID is they did like a home movie version, which has some of the actors and then just people like you and me that made it with their smartphones in their backyards or in their houses. And it's hilarious. And it's pretty much every single scene in the movie, some of it using Lego figures. So
you can be very creative.
Absolutely. So, well,
all right.
Thank you so much.
I'll see you next time.
See you next time.